Hello and welcome to the Hugh Hatrick Show. And it's a very special show tonight because we have two guests, both from Simstaff. We've got Max and we've got Jack. Hello to you both.
Hi, Hugh. Good to be with you today.
It's great to have you on. And Jack, first time on the show.
Nice to meet you. Thank you very much for having me. I'm looking forward to this.
Yes. Well, Simstaff, we've had so many interviews with your big boss there, Josh Martin, who kind of runs it with a sharp, I was going to say a big stick, to keep you all in shape and keep you working hard. But actually, you've got plenty of work to get on with, as we've been talking about beforehand. But Simstaff and, of course, Simrig Support, which is what Jack is a part of, which are part of the same group of businesses. We'll start with you, Jack, because they might be familiar a little bit with Max. So we'll start with you, Jack. What is your role and how did it all come about?
So I'm the equipment manager for both Simstaff and Simrig Support. So I've kind of got like a variety of roles. Within Simstaff, I lead the warehouse. I build all the rigs, prep them for the events, and I also provide the technical support there. But actually, stemming from that, when Simrig Support launched, we found it's quite useful for myself to be part of that team as well and provide the technical support there, and not only to use the knowledge that I gained from event running and getting, working on the sims there, but also the knowledge that I gained from working the SRS side, I would help bolster the SimStar side of it. So I've been working on in SimStar since about June last year. I started as a technician. And a couple months ago, I started, working on the warehouse. We just moved to the facility, and it was kind of like Goodwood kind of time. I then moved into this management role where I've been, primarily working within the warehouse, building these rigs, and providing the technical support there. And then about the time that SRS was starting, I was talking to Josh, and we were, working out exactly what would be the greatest way to kind of use my expertise and apply that to Simrig Support. So that started a couple of months ago, and it's been an absolute blast since.
So what was like your first ever kind of Simrig support person? What kind of drama did you have to deal with when they phoned you up?
So it's actually it's not the most exciting one, I won't lie. So I mean, we do with a bit of everything. Whether it's there's a serious malfunction, but my very first one was just a case of there was an issue with the monitors. They were trying to run a triple screen setup, and NVIDIA wasn't quite playing ball with them. So it was dealing with all the drivers, working through the software and trying to get that working for the user. But then it stems from something like that, which is a relatively short, just showing them the ins and outs of the software and getting that all set for them. And then, we've gone to the points where sometimes there's, a serious malfunction with a bit of kit that's happened. So I've had in the past, like a wheelbase, I was failing to send out any sort of data whatsoever. So it's, a bit of troubleshooting, diagnosis of that, and getting that back into a working state for the client.
Yeah. And did you manage it? Did it all end up working?
Ended up working. I've not yet had one, not go wrong, but there's a few of these, especially we always say to people when they come, like, look, it's not always going to be a case where we're going to get it to 100% working state. But what we can do is provide the advice and the technical knowledge. And if it is a case where something needs, RMAing, returning to manufacturer, we can, supply that advice and, point them in the right direction to it. But not yet.
So you've not had to say, one moment, please, and just not go back. Oh, we've lost the call.
Not dropped them yet. Not dropped them yet.
I'm joking. See, I used to work in the call center, so I know all those tricks. But but no, that sounds great because I mean things are so complicated now, aren't they? Well, there's so much new software and then so many new, even steering wheel and pedals and getting all that set up. I suppose there could be a variety of an endless variety of things that could go wrong, or people just not plugging things in right. Is it what's the kind of common fault that you find that's easy for people to avoid?
100%. It's actually quite useful because I mean a lot of times I've done work with on these events with Simstaff with some of the larger manufacturers, say like Fanatec, and the technicians that come from that end. They've always pointed things out to me. So that's like kind of knowledge that I've gained from that side, which I brought over. And then on to like, the most common things I've kind of noticed is even just some people, they forget to download the correct firmware for it, or let's take, the Fanatec pedals, for instance, they can quite easily be plugged into the wrong place. They're not getting any data out of it. So there's always a step of thing, a list of things you go through. And quite often as well, there's never the same issue that goes across everyone, right? It's always a mixture of issues that come up, create this one larger problem. So whenever we're dealing with these calls, there's a list that we go through, and quite often it's the case of like, look, we'll deal with this issue, we'll get it all working, but we're also going to then try to prevent future issues. So it's always just dealing with all the firmware, dealing with all the software, and just checking everything there and then for them. That way, should a month down the line something happen again, we at least know that system was in as prime of a state as it could have been going into that, so we know where to look.
Yeah. Oh, that's really good, because I remember trying to connect because I do a lot of PS5 console streaming, and I had an Elgato streaming box on the HD 60 Plus, and I couldn't figure out for the life of me. I watched the video telling you which wire you had to put in, which HDMI wire went from the console to the PC to the television to the whole thing, and it was just like, and I watched the video about 5 times over on YouTube to try and do it, and in the end I still had to get somebody to help me on Discord to kind of put this one in here, that one in there, because the input and outputs, it's just sometimes difficult to take in. I suppose you'll deal with things like that as well.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. Compatibility has been like, a massive issue. You look at, I'll take Fanatec as another example. Compatibility, whether it's an Xbox or a PlayStation or PC, require completely different things, and they'll all look identical. But there's always a chip that might or may not be present, whether that's in the wheelbase, the wheels, they've all got to match and all be compatible with the same bit of equipment. So when we deal with clients, especially those who are like looking to get a new rig, it's always going like, look, what are we trying to run it on? And then going through all the bits of kit just to make sure it all works. Because the last thing we want is, someone to get the lovely kit, they're ready to go, raring to get it all set up and, racing that evening. And then the pedals aren't quite compatible, so they have to wait for new ones to come in. So it's always worth a double check, right?
Yeah, I know, definitely. Well, I will go on to Max, who's been waiting there patiently to take questions. And for everyone who's watching here tonight, you're welcome to comment and to put your questions up there. If you put them in capitals, then I can see them a little bit easier, and I will put those to either Max or Jack, whoever you would like to request. But Max, let's get up to date in what you've been doing over the last few months. What's been the big events and the exciting things that you've been up to?
Well, I was watching the last podcast you did with Josh, and rather annoyingly, he spoke a lot about Goodwood, which was what I was planning on talking about a bit, because so Goodwood this year was our biggest event of the year, well, not of the year that we've ever done.
Wow!
So we had 15 techs, 5 different stands, all across obviously the Festival of Speed. So I won't go into too much detail about Goodwood, but I think so. The big events we've done since we last spoke. Jack and I, we both worked on F1 esports again this year, or F1 sim racing.
Wow.
So I think it's the 3rd season now that I've done. And it was the first for Jack. So a slight baptism of fire for him as one of the. We've gone back to LAN obviously after COVID, which was really nice. And Jack was with us as one of the stage technicians, and I was on the sort of race direction kind of side of things. And it was a new experience in a way. We've done things like V10R, we've done that in person, but it's the first time we've done F1 back in person while Simstaff has been involved properly. And I think I speak for everyone involved when I say, we're just really happy to see it back on LAN. So, having all 30 drivers, including sort of the reserves and substitute drivers there in one room was really cool. And, having that kind of camaraderie with your colleagues, and also a bit of, let's say, back and forth with the teams. If we'll be polite, sometimes they're your best friends, sometimes they're your worst enemies. So
it was a live race from Goodwood, wasn't it? It was that's really good to have everybody there as well, so people could watch it.
Yeah, so the F1 sim racing stuff was at ESL Studios over in Sweden. So it wasn't a public event this year, but it was still like obviously all in person. I know they had the first round at DreamHack in Sweden last year. So that was quite cool to sort of have an audience. So that's kind of the big headline of the year. We've also worked with F1 on F1 exhibition. I don't know if you've seen
Oh
much
yes,
about
yeah, that's right. Josh has said he's got one in London, and he also had one in Canada as well, in Toronto. Yes,
Yeah.
tell us about that, because that looks like a really good exhibition. And is it still currently on in London? Is it on up till Christmas? I think, is it or
I believe it's on. When Jack, do you know when it's on until? No,
I think it's I want to say it's like kind of start of January it's ending, but don't quote me on it.
I know it's sort of about 3 months, but I can't remember when it started now. But yeah, basically,
it's open now, I think, and I'm sure it's already. Yeah, it's
so
been
it's
on for
over
a
at
while.
the XL in London. And yeah, F1 have put together this sort of museum almost, an experience about Formula One that's traveling around the world.
Yeah,
And they approached us sort of about a year and a half ago now and said, we want simulators there.
wow.
Which, as we all know, it's, the sims are a big draw for people these days.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So yeah, the first event was in Barcelona, where they didn't have any sims, or in Madrid, sorry, where they didn't have any. And then Canada is when we went over, and Josh was there for the install. And if you look at it, all of them have got sort of Simstaff written on them, which is really cool.
Great advertising for you, and
absolutely.
And great credit for the fact that Formula One approached you to do the exhibitions, because as you say, it's a new industry, but you're out there, and but you're a fairly new company overall, and they've chosen you to do these big events. And I have to say, from recently playing, in fact, I just launched an F1 video, 2024 video, just before we started tonight. It's a game I really like. How do you find it? Because there was a lot of controversy when it first came out. People didn't like the handling setup, and they were all saying how bad it was, but then they updated it. And I have to say, I got it after the update, but I really quite enjoy it. And I think the graphics are brilliant. When you see the replays, I think it's almost as good as watching the real thing. The way that they've got the detail on the cars, and it seems to be pretty good. What was your view? I know and obviously you've just used it in contract with F1, but genuinely, I think it is a really good game.
No, I think every year we always get inundated with sort of complaints about the F1 game, and obviously I know this year it was the handling model, which, as you say, they sort of updated quite quickly. I think ultimately a lot of people kind of forget, especially with things like F1 sim racing and the World Championship, that it is more of an arcadey kind of style game. It's not meant for like your hardcore iRacers and things like that. So is it going to be perfect on the sim side? Probably not. But in terms of like an overall game, like, it's by far and away the most usable title I think we use.
Just jump in and
in
drive.
terms of customization, like, you've got AC, which is better for customization. But in terms of, when we're doing an event, kind of a public event, most people recognize F1. Most people can get to grips with it relatively quickly. And ultimately, it is just quite fun. And I think that's what people sometimes in the industry kind of forget, that games are meant to be fun and not just for competition. So, I really enjoy it. And I'd say probably this year, while I've sort of stepped away a little bit from the competitive side of sim racing, it's definitely probably the title I've played the most.
It's much more fun than GT7. I think, in terms of just being able to play and not be taken off at the first corner, or time and time again, or at the end of the first lap, or any time that you just happen to be minding your own business, and you get taken out by somebody. But I've done a little bit of multiplayer, but I quite like even just doing the single player. Because you can just create your own race, and it's great for making shorts, because you can do an epic overtake, and then you can try and do it on your shorts, and take it on your phone, and it's great, and people think it's the real thing, and then all the thing is you get a copyright claim because F1 think it's theirs, and that. So it's just the annoying thing. But no, it is. It's I love the way they do the music at the start and the big intro and all that, because it kind of builds it up like you're watching it on TV, which is always good. But yeah, so I take it you'll be carrying on with more F1 events into the winter and obviously next year.
Yeah, so we're continuing our work with Williams F1. So we've worked with them for the past sort of few years. They've got, I don't know if anyone's out in Austin at the moment. They've got their fan shop over there.
Oh wow!
Which is basically, they've got 5 sims there, so you can go along, try them out, and they're running a competition with an organization called Race Prodigy. Which basically, if you get one of the faster times, you get entered into a competition. And the whole idea behind Race Prodigy is to sort of it's similar to the old Gran Turismo, like sim racer to racer kind of journey. So they're sort of trying to push that side of things. So they're working with Williams at the moment.
Wow.
So there's that with in Austin, and then they've got in Vegas as well. They've got their fan zones, which if anyone is in Vegas, it's a really cool thing to check out.
A safer bet
into
than going to the casino, I'm sure. Just to go in there, pay your money, and have a go. Yeah, it's definitely a lot cheaper for sure.
But yeah, those
sorry,
that's absolutely fine. We've got those things planned with F1 at the moment. I'm sure there's other stuff in the pipeline, but at the moment it's a bit above our pay grade. But we are working on things for next year that will be coming. So sort of stay tuned for that kind of stuff.
Now, I take it your boss will be off to. Is Josh off to the expo? Because I know you were doing work at the expo this weekend, weren't you? You were, in fact, you were another international event where you were encouraging people to use Simstaff to cover for their stands. I mean, that's a big step forward again. I mean, because that's you hosting in a big exhibition, international exhibition. Do you ever feel a bit daunted by some of the things you end up doing?
I think, we've been doing stuff like that repeatedly for the last sort of 3 years since the company started. Each and every event we do, like it's, this is the biggest thing we've done at this point. This is the biggest event we've done, blah, blah, blah. Like it keeps happening. So it's almost second nature now. So yes, we're the official staffing partner of Sim Racing Expo. So basically any people who have got stands, any companies that have got stands, but don't necessarily want to fly people across the world to staff it, they can approach us, and then we'll send one of our local technicians over there. So we're on a stand with Hyundai and Gridfinder this week in collaboration with one of our partners. So that's really cool. And we're doing a similar thing at Autosport International at the start of next year. So they're trying to build their kind of esports side.
There wasn't a massive. I mean, they did have simulators about that you could use. But it was the first time I've ever been to Autosport show this year, and it was quite decent actually. I would go back, but I don't know if there was quite so much for the young. I took my son with me at that time; he was only 10. But I think I would definitely like to go back. I said to my wife, "I'm going back." So it was because it was good fun for the whole thing. But yeah, so there's going to be more simulators there next year for people to have a go on and try out their skills.
Absolutely. So we'll be there. I can only speak for our stand at the moment because I don't know what the other ones are doing. I know there's some bits from people like Williams. I think they're sending a couple of sims. But yeah, we're going to have a stand, so you'll be able to use
will that actually be a Simstaff? Will that actually be like a Simstaff stand then?
That's sort of currently the plan. It may be in collaboration with one of our partners, but we're looking to have sort of about 5 or so sims for the people to use in some capacity. We're still, it's still early days, still on the drawing board. But, we want to use it to kind of promote, obviously, our staffing solutions, things like SimRig support, which obviously we've spoken about. And also we do, I guess in conjunction a little bit with SimRig support, we do sort of private installs for customers as well. So fully pre-built sims that, we've built in our warehouse. Jack is very good at that. So
I've seen some of the videos on Instagram, and they look really good. It's great when somebody comes along and say, right, I've got 10 grand. What can I get for 10 grand? And then you can say, right, and look in the warehouse or give them the recommendations. But I must imagine you've had some pretty spectacular in-home builds.
Yeah, I mean the best one, and I'll let Jack go into it because he was the man that carried it out, was this one we've done recently with Adam Fawcett, one of our customers.
Over to you, Jack.
Yeah, I was quite excited about this when you mentioned the stuff we've done for people. It was a little bit out of the ordinary. So we'd built a Sensations, like a GT style simulator for him about a year ago at this point, and I went to visit him to do some maintenance on the rig probably a couple months ago at this point. And he's like, I want to do something to make it a bit more unique. So I was talking to him for a bit, and we decided we were going to build this grand project of a wall-mounted PC build. So I went away from that. We found the right case. We laser engraved all the glass on it, all this custom RGB, got it all really, really nice spec'd up, and placed it right above the rig for him. So it's things like that, where it's not necessarily stuff we've done in the past, but talking to clients, going, all right, go crazy. What kind of thing would you like? We'll make it happen. No matter the situation. So that that was my little maybe for a bit as a big project that I worked on. First time we'd done it, but something that I'd be more than happy to do again.
Yeah, absolutely. And is it quite? I mean, is it quite a big cost to get things laser engraded on glass, or they see these neon type or the LED lights in the background with people's names on it? Is that quite a straightforward thing to do and relatively low cost, or is that quite a high cost?
It's not crazy high, but it's not super low either. The main issue I had was actually finding someone who's willing to do it. Because with tempered glass, it's not the easiest thing to laser engrave. So I did a lot of research throughout the entire of the UK, and eventually I found the people who build the trophies for Great British Bake Off. And been talking to them, and eventually they agreed to take them in and do them. And it took them about a week from dropping off the glass to getting it back. And then from that point, it was everything else we got done on site with the day. So for the client, there wasn't a day, like we got there, his PC, his whole rig was working, and we had installed the replacement PC on the same day. So he didn't have any downtime with that either. So he wasn't sat around waiting. And we got, we went there, he had his normal rig. End of the day, he had a really, really cool PC mounted above it.
That's pretty good going. And of course, you deal with console as well as PC rigs. So if someone's got an issue with that or just wants to be PC console based, you can help them with all the kind of issues that they might have, trying to get things sorted with that. I mean, I suppose maybe they're slightly more straightforward with a console, isn't it? Because there's less, it has to kind of be updated either via the game or have you had issues with things like that too?
So sadly, it's actually, if you're on a console, in terms of actually, if there's an issue with the kit, it's a lot harder to deal with. What we tend to do, we had an event in London not so long ago, and they were running a simulator using a PlayStation. And what we had found halfway through the event is the actual drivers on it had corrupted. When you're on a console or anything like that, the only way that we could access it was using a laptop and connecting the wheelbase and everything through there and updating it through basically a PC rather than through the console. So I tend to say, like, when it comes to simulators, especially like the current market we're in, you'll find it most things are compatible with the PC. However, then if you want to use a PlayStation or Xbox or anything like that, you've really got to do your research behind it. Because again, there's compatibility issues. And then if something happens, so there's a driver corrupt or anything like that, there's very minimal that you can do within the console space. Because at the end of the day, they're closed. There's no sort of external software that's allowed onto it. So if there is an issue, I would say either have someone that you can call that can come sort it, or have the tools on hand to be able to help yourself. So whether that's just a laptop or anything like that, just so you're ready for it. Granted, they are mostly bulletproof, but as with anything technological rise, there's always going to be something that goes wrong, right? It's never perfect. But compatibility strikes again.
Yeah, no, that's it. And now, Max, going back to the Autosport show, I take it because some of the places some of the stands, they were charging people to have a go on their sim rigs. Would there be any freebies for any watchers of the Hugh Hatrick show, or perhaps myself? Could I come along and have a go on one of your rigs and not have to pay like a true Scotsman?
Spoken like a true Scotsman. I can see why you get along. But I think whether it's maybe a little cheeky, if I saw you on the podcast sort of thing, or obviously yourself, Hugh, then I'm sure we can sort something out. But like I said, it's a lot of it's work in progress at the moment. We'll have a clearer picture at the end of this year, start of next year, kind of thing, on what the stand will look like, who can come along, who will come along. Whether it's going to be open to the public or we're going to run championships. That sort of thing. So basically, we're sort of open to ideas at the moment. We've sort of got this stand, and not that we don't know what to do with it, but we've kind of, we're very excited. It's the first time we've done this sort of thing. We've done similar bits with at the Canadian Auto Show before, but typically that's been with partners, so we haven't necessarily had as much freedom as we've got with Autosport. So yeah, if anyone's got any ideas and the kind of thing they want to see, then by all means throw them out there, and we'll see what we can do.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. I think it's great fun being able to go and experience, especially if you've not done a proper sim rig kind of race before, to actually go on a really good bit of kit and have fun in a race. It makes a big difference. What I would say is that when I was at the Autosport show, they had the F1 in schools deal there, so they all had, they had these special little racing cars that you could race up and down the circuit or on the straight. But they also had a couple of simulators, and my son had to go, but he was a wee bit too small. Or they said, oh, he'll fit, but clearly it was when he got on the rig, they pulled the seat forward and it wouldn't go any far. And they didn't have any pillows or cushions or anything else that they could have put in. And when you think what's F1 in schools, most of the people coming to use it were young and were maybe 10 years old or thereabouts. And the part of the staff just said, well, we don't have anything. So that was that. So I remember saying to Josh, hopefully, that's something they can learn from, because a lot of the people who are going to come probably won't fit on your seat or on a normal rig. You need to be able to work that. And talking of a rig that is capable to fit young people, say 8 years old upwards, right the way through to adults, is there a particular bit of kit that you would recommend for that kind of, say, as a family wanting to buy a rig, but use for the kids as well? What would you recommend?
Yeah, I think we've done sort of builds for sort of young teenagers. We've not really quite gone quite as young as kind of 10 or so, but sort of an aluminium profile rig with like a cart seat on it can work quite well. Obviously, you've got a lot of customizability with that as well, because like an aluminium profile rig, you can then you change the seat on it, you move it back a little bit, and then they can use it up until they're a full adult, basically. In terms of like dedicated products, there is, I think, Next Level Racing offer like a kart sim, which again is sort of like that smaller kind of size for more appropriate for kids. So, but I think, like I say, ultimately it comes down to the kind of seat you're using and just setting it up specifically for that. So, like for example, the rigs we tend to use, the Playseat Formula Intelligences, we probably could set them up more in a way for kids, but unfortunately these events, the majority of people aren't kids. And you'd have to get out spanners and Allen keys and all sorts of stuff.
Because they're not as flexible, aren't they? You can't just use a runner on underneath with a wee metal bar.
But it is something that we've considered, like at events, pretty much every year at Goodwood or something, we'll come back and we'll say, like, guys, we need to do something with these sims for kids. So it's definitely something we're looking into, as well as sort of accessibility sims, because you want to make sure that everyone can sort of have a go, because we've seen, even when kids, we've had them sat on their parents' lap and all this sort of stuff where, to be honest, they're not really controlling the car. We've got all the assistance stuff on, but they're having a great time, and that's the kind of thing that makes the events really rewarding, is sort of seeing the smile on people's faces, and particularly when they're kids. They might have, we did have it at Goodwood where they'd go around some stands and they said no, they can't do it, and we were like, well, we'll find a way. And we'd have people queue up for sort of like 30 minutes specifically because they're, the kid wanted to have a go on the sim. And
well, they used to do it in karting, isn't it? Because if you do it in karting, they have those extra bits that go in the pad. It's like a kind of cutout, and they put them in the back of the seat, so that gives them a bit of lift and it's tighter. In fact, even adults can use them. To be fair, I've used them before when I've done go-karting, and it just keeps you in the seat more. And they can use them for kids. Because when I had my old Playseat Challenge, and my son used to use it, and he could reach the pedals, and because he was quite low down, he doesn't look. We had to kind of raise the TV up so that he could see the TV above the wheel. But we just used lots of cushions and pillows and different things, and then that kind of propped him up enough so he was able to do all the pedals properly and the steering, and it worked quite well. And was the only thing is with kids as well, they tend to hang on to the wheel and kind of pull the wheel down. So it's making sure that everything like that is on properly, isn't it? Otherwise, eventually it's going to come off if it's not secured on properly. But yeah. Now, tell me, do you think, being that this weekend we've got the International Expo in Germany, do you think Britain, because Josh said that maybe that it might happen over in the UK, do you think they'll ever put on a British sim racing expo? Do you think it's something that they could do?
I think there would certainly be an appetite for it, particularly if you did it maybe in 6 months' time compared to the Sim Racing Expo in Germany.
Yeah.
Because at the minute we've sort of got one big event that's dedicated to this industry, and there's not really anything other than that. I think the UK is probably the most engaged with the industry. You've got the US, which is a massive market, which it's always growing over there, and I think it will continue to grow. So you see esports at things like the what's it called? Not PFI. What's the Indianapolis show called? Jack, do you remember? PRI. That's it.
All right.
So they're they're increasing sort of their esports presence, but there isn't really another event like it that's sort of dedicated to this sort of stuff. So I think there certainly could be appetite to do something like that, and sort of bring everything together. What that would look like exactly, I'm not sure, but I think it would be really cool to see.
Yeah. And what do you see kind of going forward with all these new games coming out, things like Assetto Corsa Evolution? Do you think that's going to play quite a big part, similar to Assetto Corsa? Do you think that's going to, what impact do you think that game will have on your industry?
I think it'll be a bit of a continuation of AC. I haven't seen too much of the game yet. I know it's being run and shown quite a bit at the expo over the next few days. So that'll sort of be everyone's first chance to get a hold of the game. I think now with the update in the graphics, at the end of the day, AC is 10 years old. So with the update in the graphics that we all saw in the trailer, it then starts to rival kind of the same product as something like F1. So if you're using it on events, because you don't necessarily need the best simulation feel at a lot of these public events, but you want it to look good. And I think, there can be no denying that AC Evo looks absolutely incredible. So I think you'll probably start to see people using it more than they were using AC on events, particularly if they manage to keep the same level of modability that they had on the previous game. I know it's a completely different industry or completely different genre. But there was City Skylines and then City Skylines 2. And what I don't want to happen to AC Evo is when City Skylines 2 came out, a lot of people tried it and it was like updated graphics, like they basically ported over a load of the mods that were on the previous one. But because it was less moddable, people basically just went back to CS1 and decided to play that because they were used to it and they preferred the mods and things like that. So I think from what I've heard from Kunos and Assetto Corsa Evo, they haven't fallen into that trap because they've used a lot of the modding community to build this game, but while also keeping, at least I hope, the modability of AC. So I think it's going to be an exciting week because I think it's the first time it's being sort of showcased publicly. But I'm really excited for it, and I think it will be something that you see more often at these kind of events.
When does it actually go on sale then? If it's being shown this week, it can't be too far away.
Is it this year, Jack, or is it next year?
I believe it's next year. I think it was delayed from what I remember. I am actually double checking. You've
Google out.
Google check this time.
Google it. Just double check it. Yeah, it's January next year, so not that far away.
So you think that when it comes out in January on the next Monday, the Monday after it comes out, Jack, you're going to be called and face a series of calls saying, "Can you help me get my AC Evolution sorted out, please?"
I hope so.
It won't work. It's not installing.
There's gonna be a few calls like that. I'm hoping the setup is very similar to like how AC set up. We should make things nice and smooth. But as you see with more modern games as well, there's a lot less. Everything's a bit more compatible. There's a lot less it needs to be done prior to it running. So I'm hoping they've kind of sorted out that side, so it's more accessible to the wider audience to be able to use, right?
So in other words, they'll get it from Steam, and then they'll just download it, and then hopefully they've got a computer that's powerful enough to run it, and then see how it goes from there. We've got Kiwi with us from all the way from Germany. In fact, I'm surprised he's not at the expo. But Kiwi is a great driver, very, very quick on GT7 sets, very, very fast times, and is a very much a regular on our show and watching. So he's saying he's missed the beginning. Well, for you, Kiwi, we'll quickly, Jack, you can quickly go over what your role is and how you can help Kiwi with his sim rig issues.
So, hello, Kiwi. I'm Jack. So I'm the equipment manager for both Simstaff and Simrig support. So I run our warehouse. I run all the equipment, provide technical, and set up every single simulator that we use for all of our events and private installs. But I also lead the technical side of Simrig support. So I provide to anyone who's got a simulator technical support, whether that's call outs, I'm on site helping fix an issue, remote calls, emails, doing what's needed to get anyone's issues simulator central all sorted for them. So that's my role.
Fantastic. It is. I mean, I have to say, the more that I think about the Simrig support, it's such a good service to be able to do. And also, you can come on site. So if you're really stuck, you can actually visit someone in their home or their place of work where the rig is, and then you can help them fix it to make it all kind of playable again and usable. And of course, Max, you do these incredible events, create these events on behalf of Simstaff. And tell us, well, our audience. What can in terms of somebody who might be wanting to work in the sim industry, what can Simstaff offer them?
Yeah, so one of our main sort of motto, I guess, is that sort of sim racing events can be done better by sim racers than it can be done by an events company, like a traditional events company. So what we look for when we're sort of hiring people and looking at extending our sort of pool of contractors. So myself and Jack are full-time, but the majority of the people who, will be wearing these shirts are part-time contractors. So some people do it as a second job. Some people do it while they're at uni. Some people, it is their full-time job. So it's super flexible in that kind of side of things. But, what we look for is a sim racer and someone who understands the industry, understands the kit, and is ultimately passionate about it. So we're always sort of looking to expand the network because there's no harm in us having more people available. We do try and sort of share the work out as best we can. So if anyone is interested, then they can go to sort of simstaff.net/careers and they can have a look at our page there, and they can apply. And if you are interested in a job in the industry and you may be unsure about it, then the worst thing that happens is you get an interview and it doesn't quite work out, but you gain from that experience. But I would say probably the people that are watching this show are the kind of people that we would be looking for. The way I got into the industry is I saw a job post at SimGrid, and I basically went, well, what's the worst that can happen? Applied for it, ended up getting it, and 3 years later, I'm now doing this as my full-time job. So don't stop yourself before you've even started. And I think Simstaff is a great place to kind of either get that foothold, or you can develop in the company itself. So like Jack was saying, he started as a technician. I started as a technician. We've then gone on to Jack's been Barcelona, Sweden. Where else have you been, Jack? You've been all sorts of places.
Racking up those Avios
all over the place. Yeah, miles are doing great. I've been to Sweden like 6 times.
It'll be demanding business class.
Oh man, first class flights.
Ask Josh. But yeah, and it's a great opportunity to learn more about the industry and ultimately get paid for it. Like if we're going to go down to the basics of it, if you enjoy sim racing, why not get paid for it? So if you are even just thinking about it or you're not sure, then just apply, and we'll hopefully see you as part of the team at some point.
Well, I helped you before Simstaff was actually started. I did the Goodwood race that they did there about 4 years ago, when it was all done on console, and they used GT7 for a race, and it was great fun. Worked with Daniel Piers and Josh and a few others as well that were involved. And it was a wonderful event, and I have to say, from being to a few bigger sim events as well. I mean, obviously to know that you've dealt with Goodwood, you've been part of the Goodwood Festival of Speed Experience is a great kind of honor, because it's such a fantastic event and one that you really always want to go to. But I remember going to one at Renault, at the Renault Formula One centre, which that was there. This was about 7 or 8 years ago, and we were watching. It was it wasn't the European Grand Prix. Oh, it was at the Red Bull track. Oh, the Austrian Grand Prix, and I'd won tickets to go and see it at the factory because they had their own kind of cinema there, and then we were introduced to the team bosses from Renault, and then you could watch the race live as well, which was great fun. But they had simulators there, they had a proper Formula One simulator, and the guy that was running it was having a fantastic time. I mean, because he was really involved and he was getting people on it, even folk who were a bit wary, and some folk were saying, "Oh, I feel a bit dizzy if I've playing games," but he got them all sorted out, and they ended up really enjoying it. So a good member of staff at a SimRig style event makes such a difference, and it is good. Is that the kind of thing that you like to do, to be as enthusiastic as you can when you're around the public doing these kind of events?
Yeah, I think it's, like we said, it's that passion for sim racing, and that reflects to the client. So if they see you're excited about it, then they'll get excited about it. The amount of times we do events, and you'll see quite often, and it is slightly stereotypical, but you'll get the husband who will go, "Oh yeah, I want to have a go," and then you'll get the wife and kids who maybe don't want to have a go, and you go, "Oh, come on, like you'll enjoy it." And they're like, no, it's fine, I'll just watch. And then eventually you sort of go, "Come on, like if you don't enjoy it, you can just put your hand up. We'll sort you out and get you out the sim." And they'll sit down and they'll absolutely have a blast. Sometimes they're super quick as well, which is always a nice surprise when you're on a public event, getting someone who's rapid on the sims. We had one at the London fan shop we did with Williams, where there was a kid there. He was probably like 8 or 9 or something, and maybe a little bit older, but he was sort of quite timid about doing it at first, but then we got him on one of the simulators, and he was, and I'm not even joking, probably 5 seconds off of an esports time. So the kid was properly quick. And we said to his parents, we were like, "Look, he could actually do this." And it's the whole thing of, you get taught as a kid, "Oh, you can't play video games for a living," and stuff like that. And it's like, well, there's a hell of a lot of money in it now if you're good at it. And if you're not, you can end up doing something like me and Jack, where you still get paid a decent amount for playing video games for a living. So
I know, no, that's the thing. You feel sometimes yourself, have I really taken myself seriously? Because you're playing games, and it's like when I stream, and I think there I am watching, and especially when I've had people watch me for the first time, and they say they can't believe that you're actually, you're playing a game and we're watching you, because it's just over a number of years ago, it would have been a kind of crazy concept, but it is quite enthralling and it is fun, especially when people chat away and ask questions, and the person who's leading the stream and answers them and has fun with it. It's all good. Tell me, what would be, if you could have your ideal sim? I'll go to this question for Jack first of all. What would be your ideal rig if you had a room put aside that was yours alone, and you could say, right, this is going to be my sim rig room? What would you put together?
Okay, it's a really good question, actually, and I'm going to be slightly crazy. I'm going to just say it tends to be one of the rigs that we use for the events, because I got so used to them, so comfortable with them now. So I'm going to go for a Playseat Formula Intelligence. I love Formula style. It might seem strange, but a lot of my time I spend racing on the Formula style games. I've done a bit of the iRacing Open Wheel series, so it makes sense for me to go down a Formula style. And then wheelbase, I've become a big fan of Acertech now. Started using them last year, working with them, and kind of since that's been my wheel of choice. So I'm going to go for the Acertech Invictus because I'm slightly crazy. I like a lot of power, and I like my arms to be feeling a numb afterwards. And then add some bass shakers to it. Why not?
Absolutely. Now, we've got a great question. It's our first question from the audience here, from Kiwi. He says, so this job wouldn't really be for someone who only has GT7 experience. What would be your answer for that?
I think, ideally we'd probably look for more, a lot of the events we do are, to be completely honest, is on PC. But that said, obviously, if you play GT7, you know your way around a sim. I started on PlayStation. That's where, I started my sort of sim racing. And to be honest, I still treat my PC like it's a console, because I've never really grown out of it. But if you do have the GT experience, obviously you know your way around sort of a wheel and pedals and stuff like that, I would assume. yeah, it's by no means sort of a no. And we, myself and Jack, for example, we hadn't worked with Ace Tech Kit before when we started working with them, but we'd spoken to the brands, they gave us some training on it. We learned the kit, and now we pass that knowledge on to other people. So there's a lot of kit that we work with and a lot of sims that we work with that you might not necessarily know already.
Yeah.
But
you do
we
train
make
people
sure
as well, isn't it? You do good training. I remember the events that Josh talked about a couple of years ago that were down south. In fact, they were at the Williams, well, they're not, I think, with the Williams team.
Yeah.
They were doing training on site there, and you learned how to build and take down the rigs and things. It's so they do get good training. But so I think Kiwi is in with a shout. You need to get in touch with Simstaff and they say that that's what you would like to do. Your GT7 and a bit of, I'm sure you'll learn with a PC in no time at all. Now, I asked this question the last time, Max, to you, so this time I'll ask it to Jack when you're on the show before. I say, have you ever been to an event? Now, it may not be like a Simstaff event, but it's maybe an event that you've attended and it was really terrible. Like the equipment was really bad, badly run, and you don't need to mention names, but give us a gist of a disaster that you were at. Not so much that you had to fix, but that you had to experience.
Okay. No, I like that. I went to an expo. It wasn't actually sim racing expo. It was a software expo. It's very exciting. About 3 years ago at this point. And while there, I was looking around and I spotted these sims, and I'm like, well, I'm here to work, but I might as well enjoy myself while I'm here, right? So I went over to them, and this was, several hours into it being open. We get there and there's one sim working and it's all loose, and it's not the greatest rig in the world. It's not been built well, and I think it is really suffered from the amount of people using it over the week, to the point where by the time I've got to it, it's one bolt holding down the wheel and the whole thing's shaking apart, and you could tell the people there kind of they weren't the happiest. They've been there for the whole week, and you're like, it's not the greatest experience in the world. But I always look at events like that, and being placed like that, I'm like, when I'm doing an event and I've been there for a week, I'm always like, all right, think about that time that I went to see this event, and I was very upset because I spent a whole week working. This is my treat at the end of it, and it wasn't the most exciting. Actually, I will add one more. I went to Le Mans this year. I was working with Alpine, and I went around, and there was one sim within the venue which was in a full chassis.
All right. Wow.
And I was really excited for it. I was like, oh, it's a Formula Star chassis, it's built and you step into it. And I sat in the rig. I waited in the queue for about an hour at this point. I sat in the rig, and the wheels, I was kind of like, my knees were up by my shoulders, and I had my arms going through my legs to reach the wheel, which is basically at my feet at this point. Goodness. And he was like, yeah, no, this is how it is. I've made it as long as possible. And I'm like, I'm not a tall guy. I'm about average. And I could barely fit. So I had a couple more laughs watching other people try to get in this thing and then swiftly be pulled back out of it because they couldn't use it.
Yeah.
So
but I also imagine that wasn't on the Alpine stand.
No, yeah,
that wasn't one of our rigs.
I better clear that up right now. That's the one. We'll be going to commercial. Josh will be texting me to say go to commercial. But it's like that. But yeah, no, it is quite something. I once went to a sim rig, but they had lots of games and they had sim rigs, but they hadn't really taken care of the rigs. And to be fair, they just had G29s as the wheel and pedals. But they had I don't think it was Next Level. Was it maybe Omega kind of sim rigs, but they were so worn through. It was like driving a kind of 100,000-mile Ford Transit. The actual leather on the seats had completely broken, and the kind of the all the interiors, the kind of all the stuff that they put underneath was coming through. So you had to sit on this seat that was half broken. And then also the steering wheel was completely loose, or the stand that it was put on was loose, so you could barely actually go around the track because it was so loose. I thought I actually made my play seat challenge look quite sturdy when I used to use it for these things, and it kind of bends and lifts when you brake hard and stuff. But at least you're kind of in it, so it's not quite so bad. But I thought, yeah, even just getting a few new seats and keeping it prepared properly would make a massive difference. Mind you, it was only about £7 for an hour, so I thought that's actually not too bad. But now I know the reason why. But so that's the kind of thing. What's the best rig that you've ever driven? First of all, Jack, what's been your best ever rig that you've ever gone on?
So I've been lucky where I've been able to do a few things with base performance, and they've got it's a carbon fiber chassis. It's the curve simulator. It may not be like the best hardware in it. It's a SimuCube, so it's pretty decent, pretty good. And it's not the most comfortable to get into, but as a rig, you look at it, you give it a go. It is honestly an amazing bit of kit, and the actual artwork and the detail that's been put into it was incredible. Just to be able to touch and use for event, let alone be able to drive in. So that's been my number one. But hopefully, I can top that at some point in the near future.
Yeah, well, especially with these new motion rigs, and I love these F1 simulators that you see them use in the factories. You get these clips on the Sky F1 of them going to the factory and they have a go. They always give like Natalie Portman a go in it, or Pinkham a go, and then you think, and she's just like laughing away as she's driving it, and you think, it would be nice to have a go and have a serious shot to see what it's like. Have you ever had a go in anything like that, Max?
The closest sim I've had to that, so there was a place near where I live called Let's Race, which was run by, I believe it was owned by Tom Chilton. If not, he was definitely an ambassador.
All right.
And it basically, they had, unfortunately, it went bankrupt, I think, during COVID. But it was basically, I think they had like 20 of those, not quite the full like on the legs kind of things they have in the F1 factories, but it was like full cockpit. Motion sim, like moving you around, kind of set up with like 20 of these sims, and you'd go up against whoever was in the room at the time. And for me, that was like, I always think of that as like my favorite sim experience that I've had, because you go to a lot of these places where they've got like this really high-end kit, and I don't think they use it to its full capability, which is slightly frustrating as someone who really enjoys sim racing. But yeah, this place, it was like, you could tell it was built by racers for people who like racing. The only thing that
to have 20 of those rigs
like
that.
I mean, it was definitely a proper setup they had there, and they had like a little bar and a golf sim and all this sort of stuff as well, and it was really cool. The only thing that I sort of regret, I guess, about it was I went for my birthday when I was like 15 or 14 or something, and you had 2 sessions, a bit like karting. And the first one, when I got back in the second time, I realized that because the brake pedal was so firm, because it was like an F1 brake pedal, the first session I hadn't been pressing it. I'd basically been pressing it about 30%. So I was sort of like pushing it as hard as I could in the second session, and managed to gain like 10 seconds a lap or something. So it's a shame that it's no longer there, because I definitely want to go back now that I sort of do a lot more sim racing. But for me, that was like my favorite sim experience, for sure.
Yeah, it's amazing how these things have come on. I was using again at the Autosport show. It was a race sim rig, but it has a kind of small motion kind of device in it, so it didn't move you like some of the big ones. But actually, because it was just a kind of small amount of motion, it really worked really well. Actually, I really enjoyed it, because it gave you just enough to make you think, because some of the motion ones, they seem to go too far. They've got you 45 degrees and all these kind of crazy angles that you would never be in a race car, because you'd be belted in and so on. But they did it really well. And it was great fun. They had also a nice surround curved monitor, which was rather nice. So I enjoyed doing. I came within a fraction of a second of winning a whole £700 worth of their simware, but I missed it by a fraction because it had a funny thing was it had a fault. They were using a Assetto Corsa. It was at the Red Bull Ring in the Group 1 cars, and I noticed that the gear selectors on the Camus steering wheel, it wasn't changing down. I was pulling for the gear at certain corners, and it only went to 1 gear and not 2, which seems to be an issue with Logitech. They do that as well. Quite often on GT7, you'll pull for 2 gears, even though you've got the speed off, but it only give you 1. So of course your car will understeer and not give you the braking that you need. Is that at all a thing that you've ever had to try and answer or to try and fix? Jack, I'll go for you.
So there's always been like little small, especially I will say, especially when it's like a big event that we're sending a lot of kit like overseas, for instance. Always during transport or anything like that. If we send it by truck or by whatever, they do get shaken up quite a bit because they've got a long journey to do. So we always package them as well as we can. We make sure everything's in its best condition for when it's there. But there's always, once it's at the other end, there's typically something that's gone wrong. Maybe it's like a dial that's lost a little bit of connection. It's not working to its to what it should be doing. Or wheels gone. So we always bring spares on that end because there's a lot of it that's maybe circuitry that's gone wrong. And doing that on site's always a bad idea. You need the right equipment to fix something like that. So we always tend to bring, like, let's say we're sending out two rigs or even one rig, we'll bring a whole rig's worth of spares. Purely for the fact is if a wheel goes wrong, like it happens like maybe 1 in 20 times that you'll send it over a distance and something will go wrong with it. Typically it's not terminal. And you can look into whether it's software based you need to have a look at. And the good thing is all of our technicians have been trained and they all know what to be doing software wise. But they've also got direct contact with like myself and other technicians as well. So if it is something they've run into and they're not used to, they've at least got support to call back on as a team that will be working on it on site and off site. And it's easy enough that we can replace it. And if it is a larger issue, then it can be brought back to the warehouse and then fixed, ready for the next time.
Yeah. Oh, that's great, because it seems to be quite a common issue, and it'd be good to know that there's a way of actually fixing it before I throw it out of the window when I'm trying to do my lap times, when it frustrates me slightly when it doesn't work. But yeah, it looks like you were about to add on to that conversation.
Yeah, so especially in terms of like your one, my basing is the first thing you should always do is just check firmware. Quite often we're noticing now they're releasing these updates, driver updates, whatever they are, and actually they might seem like, oh, they're here to fix one issue, but they'll cause another. So with all of our equipment, I'll have a list of, okay, this is a driver that we've been using for a certain period of time. We know it works. I'll take, graphics drivers, for instance, as well. And what will happen is your wheel, will automatically update to this new driver. And what that might have is, okay, you might notice it's more responsive, but it'll have unintended consequences. So whether in your case it's causing you to have, it's not as sensitive in terms of what it's detecting. If you're shifting up, maybe it's only detecting 1 rather than 2. So it's the case of, okay, either A, reinstall your current drivers or revert it back to an older one. And that way you're just double checking. I always tend to say, it's not broken, don't update it. Unless it brings out a serious change to it. For instance, quite often it's something like, oh, we've updated it, and you'll never feel the difference, and you'll never see the difference, and it can cause issues. So unless it's a confirmed, maybe it's an update earlier, I tend to go for, because that's when like the bug fix has been done, and that's a secure driver. Most commonly the up-to-date one can be a little bit rocky at times.
Well, I've got the Logitech thing on my PC there, the kind of driver type thing, the Logitech hub. So I will go on that and see if that might be an issue, or if I'm short, or maybe I don't have the most recent updates on it, perhaps. But that will be a way of what I will do next. So Max, what is next on your agenda with big events coming up? Have you got anything big before the end of the year?
So we've got a couple bits. We're going to be working with sort of the next big thing coming up. We've got some rigs going to the MTV EMA Awards.
Oh wow!
So slightly different, not quite within the industry, but
very
it's
different.
a cool experience because to sort of have those, particularly for some of the artists and stuff backstage. So we're going to be doing that. We'll try and share some bits and bobs on that on our social media channels. But it's cool to be working with something like that. We've got a few kind of LAN finals that I know are still in the works. That should be sort of happening kind of November, December time. I'm not sure how far along on the planning they are from the organizations we're working with, so I don't want to announce anything that might not have already been announced. But that should be fun.
That'd be good.
Yeah, so that's gonna test our equipment and test Jack. So he's going to be busy in the warehouse getting those prepped and sent out. We're doing a partner event with Simstaff, which should be sort of happening kind of November, December time. I'm not sure how far along on the planning they are from the organizations we're working with, so I don't want to announce anything that might not have already been announced. But Formula E, which is it's like an expo that one of their partners, Emphasis, is
All right.
holding out in Venice. So it's the
Wow.
first time we're going to put one of our sims on a boat and have to get it to the location, which will
fantastic.
be I'm a little bit nervous about, but it's a new challenge. So you know, it would be
Italy. What could go wrong? Italy and boats and all sorts of things like that.
just
I'm
put it
sure,
in.
you know.
Just put it. Is it got gondolas? Is that what they're called? The
Yeah,
boats
that would
in
be. You
Venice?
might have to. It'd be like something out of Indiana Jones. You'll be get the oar and start rowing. You know, it's it was like that sounds amazing. Actually, sorry, what did you just?
So we put a sim on a boat before at Monaco this year.
Oh wow! Oh yeah, we did.
Don't forget.
Yeah, we had on a yacht.
Oh, how could you forget you were in Monaco? For goodness sake.
It was on a yacht, Max. Come on.
It's Monaco, Hugh. It's
one
just
of those
Monaco.
weekends you know.
just another week in Monaco. But yes, we have had it on a boat. So there we go. Venice isn't special.
We're fine.
That sounds amazing. And you never know with your MTV awards, perhaps you might be inviting Taylor Swift to come and sit in your latest sim rig, and she'll sing while she races away. But no, that's an interesting combination, isn't it? It's not the kind of event you'd expect them to have to want sim rigs along, I suppose. But no, that sounds like it'll be a lot of fun. That so in terms of what we'll be going for over an hour, which I really appreciate you putting your time aside to answer our questions tonight and to talk about what you do. For Jack, what do you see developing in the field of the SimRig support? And what do you think as going forward will be the next big kind of build or in terms of servicing needs that you'll be doing?
I think we got to look on kind of what's coming soon, right? So there's two major titles which I think is going to have a big impact on what we're doing. The first one, of course, being a set called Cerevo. We already talked about that. I think there's going to be definitely some compatibility issues that pop up. People trying to find the right setups with it, but then also something that we haven't really done much of, but we have been looking into is Microsoft Flight Sim. So they've got their new sim launching in next month. And I'm expecting quite a few people who've had issues with that, and trying to look into that as well to come our way, and we'll try our best and to support them on that side. So yeah, there's two major titles that are coming up, so I think we're gonna have quite a few issues that pop up with those, especially as they develop. But it's also it's just about trying to stretch the name out and bring on more hardware issues. So at the moment, yes, okay, we've been able to fix, there's a lot of software issues we've been able to fix, and there's a lot of smaller hardware issues, but also now looking at, okay, if something's gone completely catastrophic, what can we do to try and fix that our side as well to help the client out?
Yeah, it's great that you do flight simulators as well. Would you pretty much do kind of any type of game, like PC game? If someone had an issue, are you able to kind of deal with that as well?
So our specialties have always been sim-based. So it's always been, specifically racing sims to be the main thing, but also, we're starting to bring in other simulators. So, the flight sim stuff. And I mean, we can always help with PC-based issues, but that's not where we're more professional at. So we're more specialist towards simulator issues. We have dealt with various, PC-related issues in the past. But it's always been what we're specialized at is if there's an issue with simulators or simulator related products.
Yeah, that's really good. Now, here's a question for you. Whenever you build a sim rig and you're getting towards the end, do you find you actually use all I'll say the ingredients, but all the equipment that they give you to actually build it? Because I always find there's always like a few Velcro strips and a few bolts and things that you find in the bag. You think, I hope they're not important because what do they mean? Do you find that you've found uses for all of these, or are they extras, or are they actually supposed to be in the rig somewhere?
So it's funny. I've noticed more so now, actually, when we're getting, especially when new rigs come in, sometimes they come with spares, sometimes they don't. So sometimes I would finish a build and I'm like, I've got a spare bolt, where's this meant to go? And then sometimes I've used absolutely everything. What I tend to be doing now is there's always spare bits and bobs that are coming through from jobs that haven't required them. So whether that's spare bits of profile or things like that. So it's always now figuring out what can we do with these extra pieces. What can we do to
Yeah.
make it a cleaner build and make it a more finished product. So especially like we're looking at, let's say, the Formula Intelligences. One of the most common issues when they're not on a flight case is there's cables absolutely everywhere, right?
Yeah,
So we've
yeah.
started working on building boxes that go underneath where the pedals are to keep, all your extension leads and all your spare cables hidden away from the users.
Yeah.
So it's now, okay, we're using everything that comes with it, but what can we do with these extra parts and what else can we add to the product, which isn't really something you would think about. Like, cable management's fun, everyone loves it, but it can ruin the look of the build, right? If there's just cables absolutely everywhere.
Yeah, no,
So
you want it to be nice
it's
and
now
tidy.
developing solutions to deal with that, but also when there's specialist needs, it's always useful to have spare parts hanging around to build something.
Yeah, yeah. And to you, Max, what do you find is your favourite bit about running an event? What's your most enjoyable part of doing it? Is it dealing with the public? Is it seeing people having a good time? What kind of things that do you enjoy most about putting on these great events?
Yeah, I think, we touched on it a little bit earlier, but it's, we get at events like Goodwood and these more public events, you get, a lot of families coming down, which isn't quite as common at some of these more specialist events. And, when we were at Goodwood last year, there was a family that came down, and basically I was on the sim that was on the end. Like that was the one I was managing. And they essentially were like, no, we're fine, like waiting, but we want to sort of have a go all together. So it's kind of nice to sort of, you have a conversation with each of them. So they had like the two kids had a go, then the dad had a go, then the mum had a go, and all this sort of stuff. And when you sat with them for, even 15 minutes or so, you could sort of have a bit of a conversation with them. How's your day? What have you been up to? That sort of stuff. And like, seeing how excited people get about the simulators, because to us, of course we all love sim racing, but this is our job. Like, we live with these things every day. We've all got sims of some kind, so we don't necessarily get that same buzz, that same excitement about it as people who they don't have these at home. And to sort of see that and share that with people is really cool. Like, it's always the repeat customers you kind of get at events like that. So again, I keep banging on about it, but Goodwood is my favorite event. It's kind of my home event as well. But we'll have someone come in the morning and they'll have a go and they'll be like, I want to get slightly quicker. What's the quickest time? What time did you do? And I'm like, well, I did this time. And they're like, I reckon I can beat that. And there's one kid in particular who
that's when you give them a bug on your make sure just in case they get a bit too close.
Well, I was confident. So it was when we did our events last year with children in need. And I said to this kid, they were running a competition, but he was too young, so he couldn't enter. So I basically said to him, I was like, if you beat my time, I'll donate £10 to the charity. And I'm not an esports driver, but I'm better than the average member of the public. But so it was you got 3 laps to go around. So we went around the first one and he was probably about half a second off. Went around the second one, 0.2 off. Went around the third one, and he was up on my time ever so slightly. But it was going into the Vale chicane at the end of the circuit. And on my lap, I braked way too late. So I gained a lot in the braking zone, but then I went deep and lost time around the last corner. So this kid, he was slightly ahead of me, braked earlier than he probably could have, but that my time just shot ahead of his by like 0.3, and I was like, yes, my money's safe. Which I know is a bad thing to say about charity, but still. And then he got the most amazing exit out of club. And I just saw the time coming tick, 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 tick. And then he beat me by like 0.02 of a second. And I was like, look, a deal's a deal. So, but that was really nice. And then he went off and he came back later and he'd spent loads of time at the sim. But then he came back and he had this cap and it was signed by like Jensen Button, Sebastian Vettel, like all these people. And I was like, how have you done that whilst you've been doing the sim all day? But it was just, that kind of enthusiasm, particularly with the kids, but, we get it from everyone. From
you can recognize a skill, isn't it? And because this is what I love about sim racing is that, it can be competitive if you want it to be, and that you can take it to whatever level that your skill set can manage. And now and if you do really well, you could end up getting into not just a big, potentially winning money and a championship and trophies and other things, but also potentially you could go into real racing. That is now becoming a reality for a number of different sim racers. So it's great to see, and hopefully that will continue. I think actually, to be fair, sim racing is a great way to reinvigorate motorsport, because for a while it's been quite hard for enthusiasts and people who watch it to really take part. But actually, if they're good at sim racing, they have got a chance to do far more and to be much more involved. And then because now the kind of sim events along with the real motorsport events, so the line is much closer than it used to be, isn't it? There's many more things going on, which is brilliant. But look, I'd love to just to say thank you so much for tonight, for coming on the show and for explaining what you do and how good Simstaff is and Sim Rig support. And hopefully those who've been watching tonight will share this out with their friends and relations and maybe even the people they don't like, and to say, look, come and watch this program about Simstaff, because it is such a good service that you do. And for people who might want to put on a sim racing event, they can be in contact with you. And if they've got a problem with their sim rig, they could do the same as well, and get it all sorted out. And certainly, hopefully in the future, if I can get my sim rig shop all sorted out, you'll be coming up to northeast of England to get it all sorted out, because I want to make sure that everything is built properly. So I'll be relying on you lot, certainly to Jack. He'll be sent out there with a train ticket off the Almouth station, and say somebody be there to pick you up. But yeah, no, it's been fantastic to hear for what you do. Is there a last quick message you would like to give out to your potential customers? I'll start with you, Max.
Yeah, and so obviously, we've spoken a lot about it today, but if you're looking to put on an event, or you want to work in the industry, or you're just interested to see sort of more about Simstaff, then you can look at our website, simstaff.net. We've also spoken about SimRig support, so we can do online calls, we can do site visits, but we can also do try and look at your hardware and fix it that way. We're partnered with sort of technicians from Fanatec as well, so that's a particular strong point of ours. So that's SimRig support. Is it .com, Jack?
I think it is.
.com, yeah.
.com, simrigsupport.com. But if you want to see what we're up to, then we're at Simstaff on social media and things like that. So we're trying to get better at social media, and you'll see, you can see Jack's PC build that we were speaking about earlier, as well as some of the events that we get up to. So, if you are interested, make sure that you check us out. Be that the website, any channels, and we'll hopefully see you at some point soon.
We've had a quick question here from Jonathan. He says, "Where is your office? Do you have a kind of HQ that they can come and visit, or things like that?"
Yeah, so we're based in Swindon. Is our main office, and then we've also got our registered offices in London. So we do have a base, but one of the things that kind of defines us as a company is that we're all over the place. So we're across 17 different countries and stuff like that. So we do have the base operations in good old Swindon, but we are really a global company.
Yeah, it's great that you can work internationally as well and help people with whatever the situation might be in other countries, which is super. But I want to say thank you very much for putting your time aside tonight. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show, and you're welcome back anytime to give us updates and to answer more questions, as I'm sure that they will come when people start to see that they can get their rigs all sorted out and also be part of these great sim rig events and sim events. I'm sure Kiwi will be hotly on that simstaff.net website filling in his application to see if he can get a job with you. And I was going to say, tell him that I sent him along to make sure that they know it was a Hugh Hatrick show that gave him the publicity. But no, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Please stay on the line as we close it down. But thank you very much, everyone, for watching. And if you've been on the podcast, it's please leave a comment and let us know what you think. And to Max and to Jack, thank you very much indeed. And I'll finish with our crazy, with my kind of little signature finish. It is drive fast, but drive your bus even faster. Bye just now.